Okay guys, so Ninja Andrew and
Ninja Misty.
Back again for another episode of Games That Make Us Sick. This is episode 2, and I'm going to call this Games That Make Us Sick Anti-Aliasing. And a lot of people, even including myself, aren't 100% familiar with what anti-aliasing does. So I'm going to put out what I think it is and how that translates into the game. And if I'm wrong, if it's a different thing, then somebody please correct me. But I'm 99% sure that that's the attribute that I'm about to talk about and show off to you guys here. So essentially we're back in Far Cry 3, or no, sorry, 4. We're looking at the environment today, guys, because as you can see, every time I move the camera, some weird stuff happens with the stuff that's in the distance. It's hard to focus on it with your eyes. It's not like it's like a crisp picture if I like move like super slow. It's not crisp. It gets blurry, right? And I'm sure that Ninja Misty will agree. Does that make you feel a little bit sick?
I'm really not even looking at it because any movement, including the swaying of the bushes down there, is on the verge of making me ill.
You know? So, like, what I'm going to attribute this to is probably too much anti-aliasing. Like, anti-aliasing is like a good thing sometimes, and it can be way overdone other times. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to really show you guys what anti-aliasing is and how it translates. So the best way that I can sort of illustrate this, like right off the bat here, guys, is just I want you guys to tell me how many trees there are on the hill, right? How many huts there are, how many rocks and other buildings. How many rocks are there here, guys? You know, and I'm sure you guys are going like, oh, well, what are you asking, Andrew? There's only one rock. There's only one hut. What do you mean, how many? Well, let's take a look.
We didn't know we were going to do math.
Yeah. You're going to have to do lots and lots and lots.
I'm not even looking this up.
Yeah. So I'm just going to keep spinning it here, guys. And the more I spin, I want you guys to tell me, like, how many copies of the trees do you see in the distance? How many copies of the hut? How many copies of the grass? You know what I mean? Like, there are definitely more than what should be there. It's repeated, right? And I'm going to get into why it's repeated, but that's just to show you this effect, like, you know, stretched out to its limits. So I'm going to stop spinning around, guys. Why is that done in the game? Why that's done is so that, like, say this hut, right? You're observing the hut at, I'm going to guess, 30 frames per second at 1080p or whatever. So already the screen is refreshing the image so many times per second. Now, that's great, but what happens when I start to move? Right? What happens when I start to move and look at a 3D object? That 3D object has to be re-rendered into the environment very, very quickly, over and over and over again, to give you all of the angles that you're supposed to be able to see on it. So in order to compensate for that, they add in this quote-unquote anti-aliasing effect, which means that really there's like a whole bunch of huts there, and depending on what angle I'm looking at it and how I'm looking at it will determine how I see them. So if I'm just looking at the hut as a central item and I'm spinning around it, anti-aliasing works great. I'm sure the hut looks very nice, very detailed, close up here, right? But as we know, when I start to do the spinning around business, anti-aliasing actually has the exact opposite effect of what we want it to do. Because instead of making the environment look crisper because everything is more solidified and unified, it actually separates the environment out in very bizarre ways, and then they have to like compensate for that, and that's why you get those sort of artifacts of when you move and the trees are kind of blurry and shading, and like the more you move, the more jittery everything gets, especially when you're making an outward rotation versus an inward rotation. So I think that like there's definitely a balance that sort of needs to be struck there in order to like make the effect work, so that you can look at things that are close up and get proper anti-aliasing while not messing around with the background effects, because the games just look much better when you can see everything. And like when I play Skyrim and stuff on PC, I turn anti-aliasing off because it makes the game feel more clear and open to me versus being like, oh, I can't see 2 inches beyond my face. So this is just an example of what I think is just overdone, or it's too much anti-aliasing in a game. And because there's no way to change that on the console version, it's a little bit unfortunate that it's sort of, you know, shoehorned in or forced in as it's over from the PC side, and we really don't have any control over it, and prevents us from really enjoying the game, to be honest. So I wish developers would take that into consideration. Next, I'm going to be showing you guys what sort of middle of the road anti-aliasing looks like. So we're going to go over to DC, and alright guys, so as you can see, back here in DC Row with Ninja Misty to show off. This is sort of like what I would consider to be sort of average anti-aliasing. I don't have a problem with it per se, but it will allow me to show off maybe some of the stuff I'm talking about in relation to other games. So just basically what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fly around this building sort of slowly, and as you can see, the building shakes and shudders, right? That's the anti-aliasing in this game rendering the building in, I'm going to imagine, every time that I'm changing the angle slightly. So it's trying to compensate and redo the math to show me what angle I'm supposed to be seeing and all this kind of stuff. So it's not terrible. It's not like obviously as like crisp as the Far Cry 4 hut was, because the Far Cry 4 hut looked pretty good, looked pretty solid when we were looking at it like this. But at the same time, when I switch over to the spin test, when I do the spin test, like everything does go out to a distance, like it is hard to see, but at the same time it all is still fairly solid. There isn't like it's not repeating the buildings like a bajillion times. Even if I go full speed, you might get like 1 or 2 repetitions, but it's not like the 6 or 7 or 8 or however many are in Far Cry 4, so it's not terrible. So like when you're actually flying around, and I think this is one of the things, is that like, and one of the reasons I've always liked flying specifically is because it does give you the chance to relax your eyes when you're flying around, because like when you're flying, everything looks good, everything's going fine, the anti-aliasing effect works much better when you're coming like straight on to something, or when you're flying in straight directions versus going in sort of angles and stuff like that, because then you can see the building sort of shudder more when you turn versus when you're just staying still. But you can still see them in the background, just sort of as they get closer to you, like shudder, 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 shudder. But it's not terrible. Like, this has never been something that has like affected our ability to play this game. It's just like there are certain things that you wouldn't do while you were playing this. Like, you wouldn't just like, oh, I'm gonna fly like, all over the place and look all over the place all at once, because you're gonna start making yourself feel sick. So that's why most people, you know what I mean? You're taking slower arcs and stuff while you're flying, unless, you know what I mean, you're just doing boss control and then not even paying attention to any of that stuff and just maneuvering your character by sheer will of thought alone. But, you know what I mean, for just on a visual level, you know what I mean? It's like, I think games like this are a lot more easy to deal with. What would you say, comparing the two that we've just looked at?
Well, I mean, I don't think I'm going to bring anything too exciting to the table here other than to say that 2 minutes in Far Cry and I'm ready to hurl, and I can play DC until my eyeballs bleed and it doesn't make me sick.
That's right.
And it's actually, when they ported this over to the PS4, it got better.
Yeah.
A lot of the visual effects improved, and you guys know that if you're on the PS4. So, not a game that gives me a problem.
And it's nice to be able to focus on your character at the very least as a point of reference, and to be able to move your camera around in relation to them, unlike Far Cry, because that can really help to alleviate some of those issues if you have a point of focus that's in the right depth of field, so that making some of these larger movements doesn't strain the eyes so much. So just something to consider, guys.
Let me add one thing there.
Go ahead, yeah.
The ability to move your camera back and forth like you can in this game, but you can't in Far Cry. So you always have that extremely claustrophobic perspective. I really hate when what it is that for PC games, actually we'll do an entire episode on this, guys, point of view or perspective in relation to this. So that'll be an upcoming episode, guys. I won't get into it here because it's a whole other discussion. But definitely, I'm just saying that, like, if in Far Cry, if you had the ability to back your camera out a little more, then some of that
change your field of view.
Right. Could maybe not be eliminated, but improved. And it may not. Right. That may be something like, for somebody like me that's incredibly sensitive to it, it's just not going to happen. But I know having that ability here in DC definitely helps me. Because sometimes I can get the camera too close and I'm like, oh, wow, I've got to back that out because it just does something to my perspective.
Back that thing up.
Right. Back it up.
Alright, guys, so next we're going to be taking a look at what I think is probably some of the best anti-aliasing I've seen on PS4 thus far, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Okay, guys, so we are here in Plants vs. Zombies. Ah, yes. Oops, I always manage to hit the no emote.
I know.
There we go. Look at an animal go. Yeah. So unfortunately, I can't turn around to show you what I look like. So you're just gonna have to deal with it, guys. I'm a sunflower, and Misty is like the candy pea pod.
I'm the ice pea wearing my candy suit.
I see. A very camouflaged ice pea at that, then. So we are here in Plants vs. Zombie because this is probably I don't want to fall down. Probably the best looking anti-aliasing I've seen in a game on PS4 to date. If we go through the two tests, you have the moving around an object. Very little, if any, perceptible jitter or, you know what I mean, anything like that. You can even see the reflection in, like, the glass as you move past it. You know what I mean? Like, just an amazing job at creating just what looks like completely solid environment. There's even out to a distance, like, everything looks great. No matter what angle you're looking at it from, like, you can move around something that's, like, quite far away, and, like, you can see just a little bit along the roof. You know what I mean? But other than that, I don't really notice any, like, major issues of...
The sky is incredible, too.
Oh, God. Like, they did a great job with this game. just making it look good. All the maps, incredible detail, even though, it's that more sort of Pixar cartoony style. So, like, the other test that I'll do here, guys, is the spin test. Now, it's I don't want to hurt your eyes, so, if you need to close your eyes or whatever. But just notice that it's like nothing is being repeated here, guys. Like, if you follow it around, everything is solid. I'll go back out on the bridge here and do that again, just so you can see stuff out to a greater distance.
You look hilarious doing it, just as an aside.
I like to spin. This is something, like, I tend to do this, like, with games, just to sort of get an idea of sort of how good they are at rendering themselves, and, I think it looks, it's pretty solid. Like, there's no complaints that I can formulate, because, like, you're never going to really, like, move full speed unless you're, like, trying to turn around on somebody, and usually if you're doing that, you're just looking at the crosshairs. And if you, like, just look at the crosshairs, like, okay, if I had to turn around on an enemy who was there and then turn around on one that was there, there's no problem with this game. Like, everything looks crisp, clean, and clear out to a distance. So this is, like, what I think developers should be striving for, because games like this tend to be more accessible to a wider audience simply because of stuff like that. I'm like, what do you think about Plants vs. Zombies versus the other two, Misty?
Well, I mean, I think that clearly it's an incredible looking game, and once again, like we were talking DC, I have zero problems. Now, I won't spin all crazy fast around just because even in the best game, that's still going to do a little number on my eyeballs. So not going to go there, but as far as having textures popping in and out, or things that kind of take you out of the immersive experience while you're gaming, no problems here.
So give it a try, guys, with your favorite games. Test them out. The patented DorkNinjaGaming spin tests. And let us know what you think. Like, and should developers, maybe try to reduce some of those effects? And would that maybe, help us all, especially going into like a future with stuff like VR. You know what I mean? You definitely want to reduce all of that type of strain and,
Absolutely.
motion sickness. So would you like to sign us off, Misty?
Yeah. Alright, guys, you know what the drill is. Like, subscribe, comments, any questions, any games that make you sick. Let us know if there are things in games along these lines that maybe we haven't thought about that you guys find are a problem. Just drop that down in the comments and we'll take a look. And join us next time for more things that make us sick here on DorkNinjaGaming.